Nacho, qui est le rapporteur AFET pour la Turquie.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Isabel, for chairing this mission. You missed Munir. It would be really interesting for having you, but Isabel was an excellent chair, and we created a good environment with Reinhold, with Arkadiusz, with Manolis, with the team. I would like to express my gratitude to the Secretariat of the committee and the advisors of the group. In the overall relation with Turkey, there is one part that is the accession process linked to our agenda as DROI, because human rights and the rule of law is part of the core of the duties of any candidate country. And the other part is in the complex mix of geopolitical, economic, and other things that we are insisting rightly to avoid. Our mission was about human rights, and we concentrate on that. I would like to do two parts. When we dealt with government and the ruling party, there was a criticism on the parliament is always biased. You are not objective. You are harming Turkey. You don't have a real picture of the situation of the country. The MHP, the Nationalist Party, in the meeting we had, they were very aggressive, mainly regarding my report, because inevitably I'm representing the spirit of my colleagues during these years. I try to explain with a kind of patience what is the role of the rapporteur. On the Minister of Interior, it was to me strange that the Deputy Minister was not aware about the problem of visa liberalization, meaning when we talk about the conditions to really go to the visa liberalization, that depending on the government sending some project to the Parliament, apparently the Minister was not aware. And we talk a lot in many meetings about the trustee system. And the government and the Deputy Minister defended the system because it's in the law and because they want to protect the country against terrorism. And when we talk about, Mr., we are not talking about the removal of the government, of the mayors. We are talking about the substituting of the mayor for another official not being part of the party that won the elections. The explaint was completely outside of the scope of the law, meaning they remove a mayor because they consider there is a risk of being linked to terrorism, and why don't you choose another people from the same party? No. What if in the future is also related to terrorism? Any kind of legal certainty, because they act politically in this way. It was a little bit deceiving. On the foreign affairs, we had the opportunity to meet the new ambassador that is already being granted the official position towards the European Union, and this was good. And we were presented with an enormous book of reforms regarding the accession process and regarding the approach of the country with the European Union. But I know for sure that Turkish authorities, they produce big books. We had 11 packages of judiciary reforms, and the judiciary is as it is, meaning it's not about to produce papers, but really to do things. And the problem is apparently there is no political will to advance in the democratic agenda, even if now the conditions of the country are different because the peace process. With the Human Rights Committee, it was strange. The agenda of the Human Rights Committee is not devoted to the political liberties. It's devoted to the situation with prisons, to the child labor, and Islamophobia. Of course, Islamophobia is not a problem in Turkey, meaning the Human Rights Committee of the Parliament is devoted to Islamophobia in Europe. not in Turkey, or what is the situation of other religious minorities in the country. Meaning they are avoiding the big things, the situation of the political liberties in the country. With the other part of the spectrum, with the opposition parties and the society, the picture is as dark as it has been for the last years. There is no single piece of good news. The authoritarian trend is fully established, and the attacks on CHP, the attack on NGOs, the attack on journalists, the attack on lawyers. That this is a deepening trend now. The attack on lawyers, and we had the opportunity to have some professionals, are there, and the attack on lawyers and the bar associations, meaning the organization of lawyers, and there is no progress. I have to admit how I admire the resilience of this society. In Turkey, there is a vibrant civil society resisting this trend, and this has to be praised, and they have to be our interlocutors. And we have this, in general, we have the picture, there is no progress on human rights. This is a political decision. This is deeply entrenched in the nationalistic agenda of the government, and the alibis to crash on any activities of the democratic parties or society is always dressed like a fight against terrorism or violent things that is, we don't see in the issue. There is hope if there is a peace process is finally succeeding, but because I see in Syria the process in Turkey is going to be affected by what happened with the Kurdish militias in Syria. But if the peace process gains traction and there is some good news in the coming months, maybe we can see a kind of release of this authoritarian trend, and maybe, we hope, the country could start coming back to the period of reforms that they had in the beginning of this century. Thank you. Following Reinhold and Arkadiusz in some way, the silence of the Commission and the External Service about the democratic situation in Turkey is damaging seriously the image of the European Union. Nobody understands the silence. The Parliament is different. The Parliament is always vocal in the report, in the delegation, in these meetings of DROI, but inevitably the civil society in Turkey is seeing the silence of the Commission and the External Service before the damaging situation of the terrible situation of liberties. And if there is a political change in the country in the future, it's going to take time to regain trust, because EU as a whole, we don't enjoy the trust of the pro-democratic, pro-European societies and parties. The silence about the situation of the CHP majors, it's incomprehensible. We only talk about energy, we only talk about security, defense, connectivity, whatever, always avoiding to say what is mandatory to anyone dealing with the foreign affairs policy of the European Union, is to assess, because it's a candidate country, the situation of the democracy in Turkey. And yesterday, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey, in an interview, said the European Union it doesn't want Turkey because the identity policies. I know there are many political parties in Europe with some Islamophobic agenda. I know there's some Islamophobic movement, but never in the last years this argument has been used. The problem with Turkey is not religion. The problem with Turkey is democracy. But they are always trying to deflect the criticism. They know they don't want us because we are Muslims. But we have 25 million of Muslims already in the European Union. And never, in the last years, nobody used these identity religion things to try to block or to say we don't want Turkey. Maybe in the future that could be one of the rationales to be taken into account. But for the moment, the only thing blocking the approach of Turkey towards the European Union membership is the lack of democracy and the authoritarian trends. And let's be clear on that, at least that the public opinion in Turkey could have our opinion. This is not about you, the Turkish citizens are Muslim. It's because your country, unhappily, is being dragged to a fully authoritarian situation. Thank you.